Dianne Thomas grew up in a typical boomer neighborhood, which has served as background for several of her short stories. She writes novels too. She moved to New York after high school to try to make it on Broadway, had fun trying for a couple of years, moved back home, and then worked all kinds of jobs: truck driver, hotel banquet manager, writer for a community newspaper. Now, Diane, that's a big resume. While you were working all these different jobs, you were writing your own things, occasionally getting something published. What were you writing back then?
A lot of poetry, which is mostly on my website now, although I was in one big literary magazine, the Three Penny Review, which is one of the more respected literary reviews in the country.
I've heard of it.
And I submitted to some websites. I didn't know what flash fiction was, but I wrote these things called vignettes, which have sort of turned into flash fiction, and some of them are still just vignettes. And I put together a website so that I could share my work and get a little attention for myself. And that was about it. Mostly I was focused on, trying to earn a living and doing the best I can, like the song says.
What are you writing now?
Right now I'm editing. This is a very long story, if you'd like to hear it.
I would love to hear it.
Okay. Picture it, Detroit, 1972. My friends and neighbors had just moved out to a farm, and my roommates had decided to go and spend the weekend there. So I was home alone, and I had a dream that my friends were all at the farm, and the place was haunted. And the owner of the farm, who was an actor, by the way, was trying to turn his barn into a theater, and he was going to do Macbeth, and they were having some troubles with demons coming around and setting fire to places and stuff like that. And I thought, boy, this sounds like a fun novel. 50 years later, it became The Haunting of Angels Lake. But in between, there was another book, which I was never happy with, but I can't let go of. It's like, it's the book that won't die. And I am almost finished with it after 50 years. So, yeah, long story.
I'm impressed that you have stayed with this story idea for that long, 5 decades. Wow.
Yeah, it's been on and off. It's like every time I had some downtime between jobs or between gigs when I was freelancing, I would go, I think I'll go back to that farm story. I finally got a full draft of it about 2 years ago, and I hated it. And it was longer than Gone with the Wind and Atlas Shrugged put together. So
That's a
right
long time.
now I have cut it down to Gone with the Wind, and I'm working on getting it about half there. There's a story within that story that I want to tell still, so I'm working on that.
Now, your novels are at the moment only available on Kindle. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I do submit to publishers. Um, I have a couple. I have one that is being shopped right now. The Haunting of Angels Lake was rejected by some of the better publishers of that genre. But I give up after a while, and I go, I just want to tell this story. I just want people to read this story, and I don't care if there's third party validation for it or not. I just want to put it out there. So, and I've done that with my short stories as well. After shopping them to various publishers and having varying degrees of luck. Nobody has ever published any of my longer short stories. I've had a few of the flash pieces published online in e-zines, and I think I made it into one anthology book. Quite honestly, over the course of 50 years, I've forgotten a lot.
Like you, I've been at this for a while and I started before email. So I would keep all of my rejection slips, which came in the snail mail, in a cigar box. And I was very proud of them. I was like, look, I'm a writer with rejections.
I once was talking with someone who was actually a fairly well-known writer at the time in his genre. He wrote like puzzle books and stuff like that, brain teasers. And, I said I had quite a collection of rejection slips. And he said, "Oh, you should burn them. Don't focus on your rejection." But, to me, it was a mark that I had tried, that I was out there trying. And that was what was important to me was, it's the journey, not the destination. And I wound up eventually, after I had kept a scrapbook for a while, just kind of getting rid of most of them, but I saved one. Well, actually, I saved two. One was from the New Yorker, and it was a form rejection slip, but the editor had written on it some lovely images.
Nice.
And, to get that from the New Yorker, I was happy with that. The other one that I saved was from a publication called Hog Farm Management. And Hog Farm Management apparently is a very serious publication for hog farmers, but they had published in Writer's Digest that they were looking for fillers. So I sent them a little poem about a pig called The Lard of Avon. And they rejected it, of course, but it was a handwritten rejection, from Hog Farm Management. So, does it get any better than that?
No, it does not. I certainly cannot say I've ever had that.
Yeah,
Diane, your cover art is
yeah.
consistently very, very good for your novels. Where do you get that, or how do you create it?
Um, it's a let me preface this by saying if I were using somebody's artwork, um, unadulterated, unedited, I would definitely credit the artist that I get it from. But it's all free photography through, the various free sources. And I have never yet found a photograph that I could use as is. But, with a little bit of tweaking and some, finagling and filters and stuff like that, I come up with something that very seldom is anywhere close to what the artist intended or the photographer intended. But it suits the story.
What
And
programs or apps do you use for all that tweaking?
um, mainly just Adobe.
Okay.
I don't have anything. I don't have anything real fancy, but there's a free Adobe program. Oh, and also Adobe has a lot of stuff that's free right in the program. I would tell you what it is, except it's on a different computer. Um, but if you just Google Adobe free art, a lot of it comes from there. And Google free royalty free photographs. I use those too. There's If I ever start to do paperbacks, um, which I may or may not do at some point, um, I would definitely go to having an artist do it and paying them for it, and right and giving them a big fat acknowledgement within the publication.
And you tell people that you write fluff, but it's really good fluff. What do you mean by that?
Well, um, I make it a point to make it a point in every story and also be totally grammatically correct unless I'm doing, like conversation where people are, being a little bit more casual. It drives spell check crazy when I do that, but that's spell check for you. I want it to be good, and it doesn't matter to me that it's not earth shaking. I realized long ago I was never going to be Ernest Hemingway or Joyce Carol Oates, but I could be Elizabeth Peters or Nora Lofts, writers that I like, who write what some might consider fluff, but it's well written, and that's what I was aiming for when I first started out reading, and really reading other than what I was assigned in high school. Um, I didn't start with the big classics. I had tried that in high school. It was not happening. Um, but I got addicted to paperback gothics, the castle in the background and the woman in a nightgown running away from, some danger. There's a whole website devoted to those classic covers, by the way. Um, but those were the books that I got interested in, and they were grammatically correct. There were no typos. They were a good story and just a fun read. And from there, I progressed into more serious literature. But when I had serious literature thrust on me, I was just not interested.
No, you had to start.
I had my reading habits had to evolve, and so I think what I'm writing is kind of what I started out reading, and I hope it's a good story, but there's always something pithy in it, I think. In one of my short stories, it's in the collection The Orphans of Avon, and that's the title of the collection as well. It's about a group of four girls who are hanging out in the summertime, school's out for summer, and there happens to be a serial killer going around killing children. And that's kind of like in the background of the story, they've got this fear of the serial killer that's, they might get snatched at any minute. And that's a very real thing. And that's the story takes place in the 1950s, which everybody thinks, or actually it's 1960 because Alaska has just become a state and they're pretending to be Eskimos. Uh, Everybody thinks of that as such an idyllic time. And it wasn't. There were terrible things happening. And, there were children being killed. There was discrimination. Black people weren't safe anywhere. And uh, women were forced into, certain roles, whether they liked it or not. And girls of that era were, really quite conflicted about where their life was going to go. Am I going to wind up like mom and, have to have a bunch of kids and, spend my day doing laundry? Or am I going to get a chance to have adventures like the adventures we're having this summer, playing playing Eskimos and doing various other things?
That sounds wonderful. Having read The Haunting of Angel's Lake, I can definitely say, yes, it's fluff and there's a lightness to it, but there's also like this dark undercurrent.
Yeah, yeah. And in a way, well, if you're from around here, you may have recognized the setting. Um, the the setting is, well, actually, this goes back to 1972 and my friends moving out to the farm. Uh, their rural community uh, seemed very, very peaceful and pastoral, but there was a lot of stuff going on in the background, and rural poverty is about as poor as it gets. And I wanted to introduce that along with the prejudices of some people in, well, in any community. It happens that this is a rural setting, but the area that I had experienced that was the setting for the story was really a pretty peacefully integrated community. But the racists were really, really racist.
We do look back at the past with rose-colored glasses and think, oh, everything was so wonderful then.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't.
No, no, it wasn't. And the there's a character in the Angels of the Haunting of Angels, like the Angels of Haunted Lake, right? Yeah, get the title right, Diane. there's a character in it who's, she has an out of wedlock child, and the father of the child is missing in action in Vietnam. You know, there was stuff happening in that world, and people were coping with that kind of stuff. But still, they were out there trying. And in the case of The Haunting of Angels Lake, they're putting on a show and they're trying to build a regional theater and bring some culture to the area.
Who is your reader? Do you keep that person in mind while you write?
I think it's the younger me. And I think there are some people like that out there, who are looking to entertain themselves, and as I was, just pass the time doing something other than watching television. In a way, um, unfortunately, the readers that keep popping into my head while I'm writing are the people who are saying, this is fluff, I'm not interested. And I kind of try to push them aside and go, somewhere out there, there is a young person who wants to read, but is not yet ready to tackle Ernest Hemingway, and is not yet, and isn't in the mood for Steinbeck or anybody like that, who just wants some entertainment.
I
And I hope I'm providing that, giving them a little something to think about as well. So,
I found your book very entertaining. I do have a question about it. You've got a lot of characters in there. Was it difficult for you to keep track of all the characters and all their relationships with each other?
um, yes and no. I knew uh, um, I needed a cast of characters to put on Macbeth, because that's the show that they're doing, and I needed a married couple, and I needed a kid, and I needed a romantic couple, and a couple of other folks to have them interact with. The work that I started out with that evolved into The Haunting of Angels Lake had twice as many characters, and I could keep track of them. But I found that beta readers that I was working with could not. And so I considered that that was, really a kind of a simplification of a complex situation that I had created, somewhere else. Um, and I knew very clearly who they were. It helps that I cast real people. Um, the proprietors, if you will, of the theater, the director and the one of the lead actresses, were a real couple that I knew. And you know, they had a daughter who had a kid, and it was, very natural for me to put her into that situation. I'm not in there at all, by the way. I'm never in there. These are all, um, I won't say stock characters, but I don't think I could have done it with less than, I think there are like 8 main characters. And I couldn't have seen doing it with any less, and making it interesting.
Oh, I'm not
You know,
suggesting that it's a
yeah,
problem. I'm
yeah,
just wondering as an
yeah.
author how you feel. Because that it was a lot. There are some authors who write many, many, many characters into their stories, and they'll even provide like a list or a tree, a family tree for them. It's fascinating. But no, I was able to follow it. Um,
I'm glad. I did think about putting, because it's a theatrical piece. It's about life in the theater. I did think about doing a list of the cast of characters, um, but I wanted to see if people could figure it out without that. Because it can be intimidating when you open up a book and you see all these characters. Like if you look at the cast of Macbeth, um, it could be intimidating trying to keep them all straight. So,
Diane, once you retired, you went through a purging process that a lot of writers maybe should go through. Can you describe that?
I decided to be semi-brutal. Um, the I started with anything that I had printed out, because anything that I had printed out was probably from the days before I had a computer. And I went through a lot of handwritten notes and notebooks, and I just kind of looked at it. I tried to look at things realistically. It's like, if I haven't done anything with this in 40 years, I'm probably not going to do anything. I had boxes of papers. I had a drawer full of handwritten notebooks, and then I had electronic files. The electronic files were the most tempting to keep, because sometimes I'd find a word or a phrase that I really liked, and to kind of make the pain of throwing it in the wastebasket easier, I did blog posts about some of those. And on my blog, I have things like, these are good lines that I wrote 20 years ago, and I've never done anything else with them. But there was one little nugget that I found that I had written about 30 years ago, that was about a scary scene that was supposed to be in the Haunted Farm book, but it never fit. And it went from handwritten to typewritten to computer written, and I could just never jettison it. And I finally found a place for it in The Haunting of Angels Lake, as a story being told around the campfire. So that kind of encourages me to keep things, which is not what I was trying to do. I was trying to winnow things down, because I'm 77 years old. I'm not going to have my eyesight and my faculties for that much longer. And I don't have any children to pass this on to. And all my friends who are writers are busy with their own projects. I just wanted to kind of clean things out. Like, you may have heard about the process of death cleaning. It's a kind of a European thing where you clean your house as though you're only leaving behind what you want your heirs to find.
Yes.
And I applied that to my writing. And there were some stories that it really bothered me to actually physically throw them out. But I knew that I wrote it at a certain time, with a certain mindset, and the world has changed too much to make it relevant anymore. And like I say, it hurt a little bit because I had put some work into it. But in the end, it's like, I know I'm not going to do anything with this. I'm no longer emotionally attached to it. Maybe it would have been a good story had I gotten it published in 1980 when I wrote it, but nobody's going to want it now. And I'm not even sure I want to read it.
Ah, but Diane, there was one you pulled out of a folder and you finished it.
Uh huh.
It's being considered, or at least read, by a publisher. How
Yes.
long had it been in the
Yes.
folder, and what made you decide that you needed to save that one?
Um, I had written it about maybe 15 years ago, and I'd gotten to a pretty interesting point, but I brought it to a point where it was like, now I need to start making decisions. And I looked at it, and I realized it needed a lot of work. And I read through it, and I said, dang, I like this. I want to know how it ends. And so I just sat there and made it end.
What made you decide to submit it?
Um, Part of it's wanting the third party validation. Um, and usually, I won't say usually, but often I'll try to get something published before I'll self publish. just see what's out there, see if anybody likes it, even though it might take, 2 or 3 years. Um, it's like getting a really good beta reader. It's about all I can say. It's like, maybe I'll get some good feedback from this. If somebody tells me something like, oh, I really like this part of it, but, you lost me over here. So that's part of the process of deciding to do that.
Where can people find your books?
Uh, Actually, one of the easiest things to do is Google Dianne Thomas, DianneThomas, and that should lead you to my website, which is it's a free website from GoDaddy. It's diannethomas.godaddysites.com. Also, if you go to the Amazon Kindle store and look for Dianne R. Thomas, you will find my books that are for sale. Or you can friend me on Facebook. My symbol is the typewriter key of the letter D, and I am happy to share things for free because I ain't in this for the money. I just want people to read my stuff.
And you've got some wonderful poems on your website too. We really didn't get too much time to talk about them, but there are just some really poems that just hit home. Now, let's go way back. We are
I'm, I'm, yeah.
we are running out of time. Let's go way back. Tell me what made you love reading and by extension, writing.
Um, I have always been in love with stories from the time before I could write, before I physically learned to write. I was making up stories and songs. And as soon as I learned to write, I started writing. And I just never stopped. As far as reading goes, I enjoyed it when I was a little kid. I was especially fond of. I was never into the Nancy Drew books or any of those, but anything by like Phyllis Whitney or the writers of young adult fiction from the early '60s. I loved all of that stuff. In high school, I was forced to read. I wanted to read, but none of the stuff they were giving me was anything that I really wanted. And then I think it was when I was living in New York and I had a lot of time on my hands because, the auditions weren't coming. Uh, I discovered those paperback racks in the dime store. And that was kind of what got me hooked as, you do this for pleasure and you do this for recreation, and sometimes you learn something new.
Oh, that's so true. Like you, I've loved it from a very early age. So somebody listening is probably thinking, yep, me too. Me too. I am going to include links to all the things you mentioned in the show notes. So people won't necessarily have to Google you. We'll have a link to your website, your Facebook page, and to your Kindle books on Amazon. Is there anything else you'd like to add? You mentioned your age, you're 77. Any wisdom to impart to younger writers?
Don't listen to advice. I wasted a lot of years listening to other people's advice, and other people's advice only works if you are exactly like them, and none of us is exactly alike. So that's about the best I can do.
And that is good for more than writing. That's very good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Write Like a Badass podcast, Diane, and keep writing.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed being here.